very nice to be here tonight and to be with all of you in this beautiful setting. Devi and I last week had the opportunity to spend time in the foothills of the Sierras up near... of the Himalayas. We spent time in the foothills of the Sierras too, but that'll come in a month or so. We were in the foothills of the Himalayas and in the Almora district at Abbot Mount. And it was an opportunity which we now take every year to have a chance to go deeply into a period of just setting aside everything else and concentrating only on our spiritual life, only on our relationship to God and to these great masters. And so, kind of on the tail of that, I think we would like to speak just briefly tonight, because we'll speak much more tomorrow. But we'll speak briefly tonight about how important it is in our lives that we make time for God, make time for our spiritual lives. You know, there are only a few aspects to the spiritual path. One is, as Master defined the path for us, it's a combination of meditation and seva, meditation and service. We're going to talk more tomorrow about service because we're going to begin to emphasize training in how to serve as making it part of our spiritual life as opposed to just a way that we help out. But we'll leave that for tomorrow. For tonight, what I want to say is that meditation and service, combined with devotion, are the essence of our spiritual path. It's the essence of the spiritual path for most anyone seeking God. And each of these things cannot be done for us by someone else, any more than we can expect someone else to eat food for us, and we can become full with that. Now, there's a famous story or two about someone doing just that, but I'm talking about normal people. You know, what was his name? Padmapada, who ate on one side of the bank of a river, and Krishna was fed on the other side of the bank. Vedavyasa. Thank you. So, well, I'll tell the whole story now that we've started down that route. So, the river was in flood, and the gopis, who normally would take the curd to Krishna on the other side of the river, they couldn't get across. And so they came and asked Vedavyasa to help them out of their dilemma. And Vedavyasa said, "Oh, yes, I'll be happy to help you." And he started eating the curd himself. This was Krishna's meal. And he ate and ate and ate, and he ate it all up. And the gopis were aghast at this happening. And then when they were able to get across, they said to Krishna, "We're so sorry, we don't have any food for you today." And Krishna said, "That's all right, I'm so full. That fellow Vedavyasa was feeding me all morning and he fed me too much. I'm too full to eat anymore." And so once in a while there's a story of somebody being able to do something for us, but that's at a very, very high level. For most of us, we can't expect someone else to eat our food for us, to think our thoughts for us, to do the work for us, to do anything that is our responsibility for us. God has given us those responsibilities. He's given us that, not out of anything other than for our own growth. Just as when a child goes to school and has a math test coming up, the parents can't do that math test for them. The child has to learn that lesson. So everything that happens to us in life, everything, comes from God. Master said it's either for our entertainment or for our education. And he said, but how few people are either entertained or educated by what comes to them in life. But that's what it is. So everything is coming to us for our entertainment and our education. But we have to accept that and work with it in the right spirit. But when it comes to our spiritual life, then we're students. This whole existence, Master said, is a school. And we're students in this school. Students that really, it's the soul learning those proper attitudes and proper actions that will free us from the delusion of Maya. And as Swami said to us, and it's been so clarifying over the years, he said that the whole of the spiritual path can be summed up by everything is done in order to dissolve the ego, dissolve the sense of separation from the totality, from God, from God's consciousness, from being a part of everything that is. But that's the purpose of everything that we go through. And so the pleasant things, often the pleasant things are not nearly as helpful and nearly as instructive as the unpleasant things. How many saints have you read about that had a boost to their spiritual path because somebody gave them a lot of money? I've never read about one. How many saints have you read about that had a big boost to their spiritual life because they went through some grief, or they went through some illness, or they went through something that disconnected them from the entrapment of, as someone at Ananda in the early years phrased it, mucking around in Maya. I've always enjoyed that phrase. Mucking around is where you're in the mud puddle. So, and Master said that, Swami said that the Masters didn't come to clean up our mud puddle for us. They came to get us out of that mud puddle. And how do they get us out of that mud puddle? That mud puddle is the ego, that sense of separation, enjoying this world, or if not enjoying it, because both pleasure and pain are equally entrapping. It's like, to a certain extent, I think if Master were alive, he used to use the analogy of this being like a movie, where you have the actors on the screen and it's all made up of dark and light, and you get entranced in watching that movie. He would take his disciples to the movie, and in the middle of the most exciting parts, he would tap them on the shoulder and point up to the beam of light that was coming down, and he said, "See, it's all just a play of light and dark. That's what the whole of this is." One time, I don't know if any of you or many of you have seen the movie Chariots of Fire. It's a very nice movie about these British athletes who were trying to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And it goes through their training and their story, and it's built up, and it follows mainly the career of these two athletes. And one of them is very, very intense. And he's been training for years, and he's run one race in the Olympics and lost. And now his last chance is there to win a gold medal. And so the music is building, and the director does it in slow motion, and the gun goes off, and the runners are straining and straining and just trying their hardest. We were watching it with Swami, and he tapped us on the shoulder and says, "It's hard to be detached at a moment like that." And so whether things are good, bad, or indifferent, as long as they're intense, then we become attached to them. And so in order to break that attachment, in order to dissolve the ego, because it's the ego that has all of that drama and attachment to it, and the likes and the dislikes of, oh, I want this, I don't want that, oh, I want to win the gold medal, oh, I don't want to lose again. And so the ego is the one that gets attached. So how do we, if the whole of the spiritual path is summed up in detaching or dissolving the ego, how do we do that? Well, we don't do it by getting more engrossed in the very thing that gets us trapped. So we have to have a chance to pull back from that involvement. And that pulling back from it on a daily basis is our daily meditation. Because if the energy, if we do meditation correctly, just as we were talking about when we did the energization exercises today, if we do our meditations correctly, then with our will of directing our energy toward God, what we do is we withdraw that prana from going out through the senses to the world and connecting us and engrossing us in the game of Maya again. And so on a daily basis, if we sit to meditate, what we want to do to the deepest possible ability is to withdraw into our own inner self and to lift that inner self up to the higher centers from the heart on up, because their Master said the lower three centers are the more worldly centers, the upper three centers are the more spiritually elevating centers, the chakras. And so we want to lift our energy up, withdraw it in, and lift it up. And the more we do that, and the deeper we do that on a daily basis, the more that energy in the upward moving direction detaches us from the entrancement or hypnotism that Maya produces. And so if we're going to make spiritual progress, we need to do meditation, at least if we're followers of this path. Other paths teach other ways, but remember, Master said that this path is the jet airplane path, because we consciously work with the movement of energy in the deep spine, in the subtle spine. And chanting or doing outward ceremonies or outward worship works with that energy, but it works with it in an indirect way, because it's something outside of ourself. Meditation, and especially Kriya Yoga, works with that energy in a direct way, because it's within ourselves, and the kingdom of God is within ourselves. It isn't outside. And so we need to withdraw and uplift our energy. But if we don't find time, and it's not easy for anyone to find time to do that on a daily basis. Everybody has challenges of one nature or another, and something that blocks them from meditating as long and as deep as they would like to. And that goes all the way from somebody who says, I can't meditate at all, to someone who's already meditating 8 hours a day, every day, and wants to meditate more. Everybody wants to withdraw more and more deeply until the goal is reached of self-realization, because it's the soul's desire for union that drives us. And so that battle is being fought by everyone. I read a sweet little story about a man who was just an average runner, but he had run a marathon. And so he was flying back through the airport the next day, and he was very sore and very stiff and moving just in a very stiff manner. And in the airport, going by was the man who won the marathon. And he was sore and stiff and walking in a stiff manner. And this amateur man's wife said, "See, he's just as sore today as you are. Or you're just as sore as he is." So it doesn't matter what the level of meditation is that we're doing, the soul is going to impel us to want to do more. And if we don't follow that urging of the soul, then it's not somebody else. It's not that Master will be disappointed. It's not that God will be angry with us because we didn't worship Him. One time somebody said to Master, "You have to glorify the Lord." And Master said, "What do you think the Lord is? Some pampered old lady sitting on a throne that you have to glorify her?" You don't have to glorify the Lord. You just have to love the Lord. And so that loving of the Lord, but the soul will impel us, will drive us to do that, even lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, until we complete the soul's journey through the long cycles of incarnation and come back into dissolving the ego, and through the dissolving of the ego to reunifying with God. And so that's the long drama that's going on. And for us, we need to find time, even in busy lives, to increase the time and increase the depth of our meditations. And it's important for each of us. Here, it's a very, very nice time to talk about this, because all of you have found the time in your life to come here and be here for this weekend. And so it's a model that we have to make time for our spiritual life. And then we find upliftment, we find fulfillment. But I'll just end by urging each of you to try to find space and try to find time for some seclusion each year. Master said, this will come out in a blog next week. Master said that we must find time to be alone. If we don't, we will never, never, never get to the goal. And so we have to find that time to be alone, because we can't do this withdrawal when we're in the midst of all the turmoil. We have to step aside from that, step aside on a daily basis. But it's very, very helpful, especially to those Kriyabans who are here, who have already shown by the dedication necessary to get the initiation and then to practice Kriya Yoga. You've already shown a lot of dedication to your spiritual life. I urge those of you, especially who are Kriyabans, to find time to take a yearly seclusion where you're completely in silence, where you're attempting to have no other agenda whatsoever except for your relationship with God and your deepening love and deepening meditation. You can take a vacation for a week, and 2 weeks later, it will be as if you never had that vacation. You can take a seclusion for a week, and that seclusion will last for months and months afterwards. And so I urge you to trade in the worldly vacation for the spiritual vacation and find that time, because your soul is hungry for it. And like Veda Vyasa on the other side of the river, it's your job to feed your soul.
Thank you, Prabhudas. So, we're trying to share some thoughts tonight about making time in your life for God, but in a way that's such an incredible irony. It's like that thought, because it's like the little newborn child who depends totally on his mother for his food and his being kept clean and warm and put to bed. And the little child's thinking, I must make some time for my mother. Who's taking care of who? So if we say we must make time for God, that's, in a sense, the height of egotism. Because if it weren't for God, we couldn't take one breath. We couldn't have one thought. We couldn't see anything of beauty. We couldn't appreciate the other people in our life. It's everything is from God. And it's not that we need to make time for Him. We need to live in Him or her all the time. And that's where joy is. You know, as Jyotish mentioned, we had a beautiful seclusion, and in the guest house we were staying in near Lohagat, there was this in the little courtyard, there was a beautiful big tree, very old, must have been many hundreds of years old, and kind of gnarled and big branches spreading out, and it was so filled with life. It had plants growing out of it, moss and lichens, and flower seeds had germinated on it. But I was just looking at that tree, and this one tree, and I was thinking, think of just a tree, what it gives to us. It gives to us shade, it gives to us fruit, it gives to us flowers, it gives to us leaves that we can feed to the animals or use for plates. It gives us the roots aerate the soil. It's a home for the animals. The wood that it gives us, it's for our houses, to build houses and furniture and firewood. And you could go on, and that's one tree. One tree gives all that. And then you think of this whole world that God has given us. It's all about it's feeding us, it's nurturing us. That's why Master said, I see God as Divine Mother, because it's divine. God as Divine Mother is always taking care of us, minute by minute. And yet we think, I should make time. I should make time. It's arrogance. It's arrogance to think that way. In all humility, we should fall on our knees and just say, God, everything is from you. And if I don't have time to meditate much, if I can't take a week of seclusion, let me at least acknowledge that I am totally dependent on you for everything. And if we can do that more and more, just be thinking when we take our food, yes, we sing the blessing, see Lord in the light, blah, 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 but are we really thinking, God has provided me with the plants, with the rice, with the flour to make this meal? We don't think that, we take it for granted. And to the extent we take for granted everything that's been given to us, to that extent we are isolated, and the joy, our inner joy, diminishes. but to the extent you can look at the world around you and see God's love shining through that tree, shining through a flower, shining through a beautiful little child filled with innocence and light, to the extent we can see God everywhere, then the joy comes. You know, in that week, and not everyone can take a week of seclusion, we know, we understand, but you can take a minute of seclusion. Before you go to bed at night, you can just think, God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the hard things, and thank you for the good things. Thank you for the kind people, and thank you for the difficult people. It's all from God. And the more we can live in that way, you know, there's that beautiful story of Swami Ramdas, and I believe it's in the book, In the Vision of God. He was a great saint of the last century, the 20th century. And his sadhana was just Ram Nam. He was always chanting the name of Ram, always chanting the name of Ram. We were sharing this story last night with a few friends over dinner. And he, one night, he would just wander around India. And one night, he was in a little hut. All he had was his chadar, his loincloth, a little begging bowl, and a little notebook that he would write Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. That's all he had. So he was in this little hut, and it was kind of a stormy night. And then suddenly the door flew open, and there was this deranged man there with wild hair and crazy eyes. And he looked at Ramdas and he said, "Give me your chadar." And Ramdas gave it to him. And he said, "Give me your bowl." And Ramdas, "Certainly." And he said, "Give me your little notebook." And he gave him his notebook. And he didn't ask for the loincloth. But there was Ramdas. And he just continued meditating. And he, in the morning, some of his followers came and said, "Master, what happened? Where are your things?" And he said, "Oh, a man came in the night and took them." And he said, "Well, let us go find that man and beat him up and bring you back your things." And Ramdas said, "What kind of fool are you? Here I'm chanting to Ram all the time, asking him to come to me. He comes to me and asks for these few little things. I give them to him gladly, and you want to go up and beat him up? What kind of fools are you?" And so that's making time for God, means to see everything in your life as God. Everything that comes, that bad health, the pain in the knee, the pain in the neck, the difficult people, the setbacks, the betrayal, it's all from God. And the more we can see that and live that way, the more free we are. And so what if God would say, I have to make time for those human beings? We'd be gone in a second. He's with us every second. Every thought is God's presence. And so we just need to try to keep feeling that. And lives are busy. I must say, being in India, I think by and large the Indian population works harder than any people I've seen anywhere in the world. But remember, you also, in India, there's more love of God than anywhere else in the world. That's why we love being here. It's why we love sharing with devotees, because you don't have to justify being in love with God. People understand, and they want to be there. They just say, but my life is too busy. Life is busy, but it's also very short. I remember I was fortunate to have a very beautiful mother, very high-minded woman, very spiritual woman. She never ever let us criticize anyone or speak ill of anyone, and she never did herself. But towards the end, but she didn't have a path to God. I tried to draw her to our path, but it wasn't her way. And at the end of her life, she said, I always thought when I would get older, I would be wise, but it didn't happen. And she was wise in a way, but she knew there was something more that she hadn't found. Let's not lose the opportunity. We have one of the great world gurus. We have this line of masters. We have satsang with sincere, deep devotees. Let's not let this life go by. And at the end we say, oh, I thought I would grow closer to God, but I just didn't. It doesn't need to be that way. There's no obstacle in your life that will stop you from thinking about God unless you let it. And that's the truth. It's really your choice. It's my choice. And when we get discouraged, when we think, oh, I'm not a good devotee, I don't meditate enough, I have negative habits, those are just Maya trying to say, don't try. No matter how much we failed, you say, I don't care, I get up again. You know, Swami said once he had a dream about many of his generation of direct disciples, and they were all running a race, and he knew that it was the race to God. And he said some of them would be running along really well, and they were making good progress. Some of them would fall flat on their face and not get up again. Some of them would fall flat on their face but then get up again. Some of them were even running backwards. But he said, eventually, they all got to the goal. No matter how many times you fall flat. Master, if you remember, he is your guru. It's not a picture with flowers on it. It's a living reality. And if you call on him and say, I know you're thinking of me, let me think of you. You will make progress. You will start to feel God's presence. And no matter what happens, you will not feel that I'm not worthy. God doesn't see us as unworthy. God wants us to remember him. He wants us to come home. We're a little bit confused, that's all. So wake up. That's why we come together in these beautiful retreats, and we honor the effort you all have made to come. We know it's not easy. Little children you have brought, travel you've made an effort to come. During this little time we have together, let God hear your sincere call and say, guide my thoughts to always go to your feet. Guide my feelings to always try to feel your love. Guide my actions that they reflect your Dharma. Guide my life that it can be ultimately only a reflection of your light. This is why we have come. We didn't come just to have a superficial life. None of us want that. We know a superficial life is not what's going to bring us happiness, but a life in depth, a life of really saying, Lord, there's nothing else. I may not be the world's best devotee, but there's nothing I want in the depth of my heart but to feel your love and your joy. And I will keep trying. And I invite you, during this little time we have together, to make an inner connection with God and make a promise to God. I will keep seeking you in this lifetime. However far I get on this path, I will nevertheless keep trying. Make a promise to yourself. You know, I'll close with this. Last Christmas, we had according to Master's tradition, we always have a long 8-hour meditation. I believe you do it here as well. But during that meditation, this poem came into my mind, and I'll just close. And it was like Master talking, the Guru talking to the disciple. And he said, I can't promise that you'll finish, meaning to find God, but I know that you'll begin to take each step before you with the thought that you will win. The prize above all others, your heart's most fervent prayer, to cast aside the ego and to see God everywhere. That was Master's Christmas present to me, and I share it with you.